Engineering at Calvin. Give me just a moment to see if I can figure the mic out.
Maybe. I'm Jeremy Vanantwerp.
I'm Jennifer Vanantwerp. We're two of the faculty members here in engineering, and we're going to take just about a half an hour this morning to give you an overview to the program, and then give you an opportunity to ask a few questions, and then hopefully throughout the day you'll have lots of other opportunities to ask questions from faculty, from students, from alumni. So you'll see that. The schedule that you see here, where we are, this is the overall overview of the program, the introduction to engineering here at Calvin. And then you'll go from here to an actual class with other Calvin students in engineering. Unless you're a parent, then we invite you to the financial aid session following this. Then there's lunch for everyone. We'll gather back together on the other side of the Beltline. So there'll be hosts here to walk you across to the lunch at the Prince Conference Center. You can stay right there after the lunch for a panel discussion with current Calvin students and some Calvin alumni as well. And then after that, you have a pretty neat opportunity to talk to current seniors here in the engineering program who are just getting started with their senior design projects, and they'd love to interact with you one-on-one, tell you about what they're doing and what makes their projects interesting to them. And then finally, there's a variety of closing activities that you'll have in your program depending on your interests. So I wanted to start with a really basic kind of introduction, which is, what is engineering? I know that you come here from a variety of places, from a variety of statuses in your college search. Some of you know that you're going to be an engineer. You've known that for a long time. You know all about engineering, and you're just trying to figure out if Calvin is maybe the right place for you to study it. Some of you have been told maybe by a high school teacher, a guidance counselor, a relative, you ought to think about engineering, but you really don't even know what engineering is yet. And so I wanted to start with a really basic introduction for those of you to just sort of think about what engineering might involve. Because the reality is engineering is complicated to describe. Even those of us who have been engineers for a full career can't really easily describe what engineering is because it's such a broad spectrum of professional activities. But I want to try to give you a brief idea. So the first thing that people should think of when they think of engineering is problem solving and creative design. So this might be one way that you would encompass everything that has to do with engineering if you think about the problem solving and the creative design. Another thing that a lot of people think about are math, physics, chemistry. So someone maybe told you, oh, you're really good at math, or you really like your chemistry class, you should think about engineering. And you think, well, okay. That's actually not a bad way to come into engineering, but it's important to understand that engineering is a lot more than just that. So I would add some other sciences and mathematics, for example. Computer science can be an important part. Materials science, which is something that you probably don't even encounter much in high school, so you don't know if you're interested in it. And certainly biology is becoming an increasingly important part of engineering. Another set of experiences or skills or education that is highly important in engineering are the business and economics and the project management aspects. Unlike science, where it might be acceptable to have a career in science that's simply the discovery of new things, in engineering there's always the bottom line involved as well. So the discovery is great, but if you can't make it financially feasible, it's not going to fly in engineering. So there's a lot of business that goes into an engineering education. And then finally, communications and worldview are actually essential. So a lot of us know what people in some careers do. You have a pretty good idea what a teacher does because you've experienced a teacher at work. You have a pretty good idea what a doctor does, at least from the perspective of a patient. You've seen a doctor at work. Very few of us have seen an engineer at work, and so we try to understand what does an engineer do, but on the other side of that, we have all seen the work of an engineer. Every day, every moment of every day, we're experiencing the work of engineers in everything in our environment. And so the things that engineers do impact us. the design of these chairs, the layout of this auditorium, the lighting, the sound system, the fabric in your clothing, the car that you may have driven here, all of those things were impacted by decisions that engineers made, and the worldview that an engineer has is actually pretty fundamental to how that technology might affect the people that use it. And so we think that talking about worldview is an absolutely fundamental part of your engineering education. Communication, you can't get engineering done without it, just because engineering, by definition, happens in groups, often groups that are scattered across the globe. So just a brief idea of the size of our department and who you'd be interacting with. These are our engineering faculty, and you can see the color coding just gives you a sense of the 4 types of engineering that we have here. So on the top left, we have the civil engineers with the green. We have electrical and computer engineers with the gold background. To the right, with the brighter green, we have chemical engineers. And then the red, we also have mechanical engineers. So those are the 4 types of engineering that you could specialize in or focus in when you came to Calvin. In addition, we also use a number of really talented adjunct faculty who will share with us their expertise in a particular area for maybe 1 or 2 courses a year. These are our current adjuncts who you can see span all the different disciplines and stop in. They're usually local engineers who are willing to share 1 course with us or 2 courses. So that's a very brief introduction to what engineering might be. Who is Calvin Engineering, or what is Calvin Engineering? Our mission statement is, like any mission statement, intended to give you...
That's what you came here this morning to hear, right?
Hopefully. The mission statement is intended to give us, to give you an idea of what we value, what we hold important. And that first statement, what we call the calling, is why the faculty are here, why the engineering department exists at Calvin. The engineering program equips students to glorify God by meeting the needs of the world with responsible and caring engineering. Everything that we do in all of our classes and all of our extracurricular activities, all of the aspects of Calvin Engineering should fall under that basic calling or mission statement. Then we've tried to further define that with what we call the 7 distinctives of the Calvin program. We were trying to communicate to students like yourself, how would you understand Calvin Engineering to be different from, for example, another school that you might be looking at? So we'll take a moment to break down those distinctives.
And the first one, and the most important one that we're going to talk about, is what does it mean to be a Christian engineer? And what does it mean that the education here at Calvin is a Christian engineering education? There's not a separate class for the Christian piece of it. It's integrated into the liberal arts and humanities courses that you take. It's integrated into the math and science that you take, and it's integrated into the engineering courses that you take. Every engineering course includes Christian perspective. Why are we doing this? How does a Christian think about this kind of engineering, about thermodynamics, about structures, about electrical circuits? All of the faculty that you will have are Christian. We have a very robust faith commitment and faith community here at Calvin. The next one that we're going to talk about is interdisciplinary, and this happens in a variety of ways. We are an engineering program in a Christian liberal arts context. And so those liberal arts are foundational for the engineering education. Critical thinking, communication skills, problem solving happens in the liberal arts classes, it happens in the engineering classes. We have a broad engineering base. The first 2 years of the program at Calvin are the same for the electrical and computer concentration, the civil and environmental concentration, the chemical concentration, and the mechanical concentration. So you get some cross-training in those other disciplines, which is very helpful when you're out in the quote-unquote real world working on a multidisciplinary team. Maybe you haven't had as a chemical engineer, advanced electrical engineering courses, but you've had the first course and you can speak the language a little bit. So this is showing that the first 2 years of the program are the same, include some introduction to engineering, some fundamentals, an introduction to each of the disciplines before specializing in the second 2 years of the program. Education at Calvin is student-focused. All of your classes will be taught by professors who are here to teach. We have 140 years of combined industry experience among the engineering faculty. So you're being taught by somebody who has been there and done that. If you compare that to an R1, Research 1 university, that is highly unusual. The typical track is straight from grad school through a postdoc into research and producing PhD students. And teaching is something that they do, but it's not the core focus of why they're there. Teaching is the core focus of why we are here at Calvin. This is a picture of my living room, and I'm talking with my hands. This is a student Bible study from last year. And this is an example of how the faculty members get involved with, get to know the students. Are, you're not just a number. Actually, you're more than a name. At Calvin, your professors will know you and interact with you as an individual, not just as part of a class. The engineering education is practical. So this is a double E lab, and you can see we've got people soldering and programming and interacting with devices. Our small class sizes allow us to spend a lot of time in labs doing hands-on projects. Even in classes that don't have a standalone lab, oftentimes, typically, you will get into the lab to do an experiment in the course of the semester. There are various student trips. There's a group that goes down to Central America each year in late May, early June, as an engineering missions trip. We have different plant tours and plant visits. I just got back on a Wednesday afternoon and evening from taking a group of first-year students to the Pfizer manufacturing plant in Kalamazoo. We spent 3.5 hours down there going over the plant and talking with engineers. And then the internship program. About 80 to 90% of our students have at least one internship by the time they graduate, which means that they are experienced. They have a leg up on getting that first job. Oftentimes that helps students to decide whether engineering is for them or what kind of engineering they might like to do or what field they might like to work in within a branch of engineering. The next distinctive part of our education is the sustainability component and looking at how to encourage flourishing of human welfare and the environment from a holistic Christian perspective. And the sustainability component of the engineering education is rooted in our Christian commitment and our Christian theology. We want projects that are good for people and the environment. And this comes throughout the curriculum, but also if this is of interest to you, we have a new sustainability designation, which includes 2 focused classes on sustainability challenges, sustainability analysis. If you then also take, in addition to those 2 classes, the sustainability themed elective and have a sustainability related experience, which can be an internship, senior design project, or research project, then you get this sustainability designation on your transcript. This is designed to be fit in within the context of the regular engineering degree program. So it's something that is not a huge extra burden to do, but students can pick it up along the way. And then the last one that I'm going to talk about before I hand the clicker back to Jennifer is the innovative component of the engineering education. We want, out of that broad liberal arts-based context, out of the problem solving that we do as engineers, we want the solutions developed to be relevant. And so that relates to sustainability in that it's got to be profitable, but we also want students to display leadership to bring forward new solutions in a business context, to be able to champion those from within a company or to start a new company to really make a difference.
So the last distinctive that I want to tell you about that we think really marks a Calvin engineering degree, you heard a little bit about in that opening video. That opening video was something that we put together to celebrate the 30-year anniversary of the 4-year engineering degree here at Calvin. Before that, we had a 3-2 transfer program for a number of years. But starting in the 1980s, the mid-1980s, we were accredited for a 4-year degree. And so to celebrate that, we had that video. And I think you heard a number of the alumni talking about the importance of the global engineering opportunities and what impact that's had on their engineering career. So we have a number of ways to get students involved in global opportunities. One of them is our summer program in Germany, which a student would participate in after their first or their second year finished up at Calvin. And here they take one of our standard second-year courses, Engineering 202, Statics and Dynamics. They take it from a Calvin professor, but that Calvin professor travels with them to Berlin. They're at the Technical University of Berlin as our host. In addition, they're taking a German language and culture course from a local instructor. All the students take German 101 before they go, so they have some basic beginning in the language, and then they continue along the lines with the German 102 and the culture while they're there. So as a group, these usually about 30 to 35 Calvin students plus the Calvin faculty member are taking an engineering course, they are taking a German language and culture course, and they are traveling all over that area together, visiting cultural sites, and discussing, having all kinds of experiences related to that. This has been going on for a number of years now, and it's a very popular program for an opportunity for students to really experience that culture, visit German engineering companies, for example, but in the context of that Calvin engineering professor who's coaching them through that experience. Some students aren't ready to commit to the whole summer program, but they will do an interim. Here at Calvin, we have a 3-week term every January where you take just one class and you focus on just that one class full time. Some of those classes meet on campus. Some of those classes meet off campus. And the engineering classes that meet off campus go to all parts of the world. As you can see from this illustration, we have recently had interims meeting in various parts of Europe, one that specifically stays in the Netherlands and focuses on the civil engineering of the Netherlands, the dike system, and so forth. The one to Europe and the one to China visit a whole series of different businesses, many of which have an engineering focus, so that you can see how engineering and business happens in those different cultural contexts as you travel with your Calvin business and engineering professors. This January we'll have a group going to Ethiopia to look at water resource issues. A couple of years ago there was a similar trip to Kenya, so I don't know where the next one will be. We also have a recurring trip to Cambodia where engineers go, but also we have education students, international development students, and that trip to Cambodia has an international development theme. So these are just some of the opportunities for that 3-week January term. You're traveling with a Calvin engineering professor, often a professor from another department as well, and you're learning about that local culture and how engineering happens there or the impacts of engineering in that culture. So you can see here some of the pictures of Calvin students on these past interims. These are a really popular way for a lot of our students to get a taste of global engineering because that 3-week January interim doesn't in any way interrupt the general engineering course sequence. Any student can fit these in without having any extra AP credits or anything else. The Summer in Germany program is actually the same. You don't need any extra AP credits or anything else to fit that in and still graduate in the 4 years of the program. So some parents will come to the faculty and say, well, this all sounds great to send my student on this summer program or on this January program, but it's an extra expense, and is it really going to be worth it? Can you talk to me about the benefits? And obviously that's an individual question for every family, but a lot of our engineering students take advantage of it, and we do see pretty significant benefits. So just a couple anecdotal stories that we've seen. For example, one way that this plays out, a number of our students, particularly after having an international experience, will seek out an internship internationally. So they're actually working as an engineering intern, but not in the United States. Quite often, it's their first experience, for example, having on their resume some basic ability in the German language and some experience living in Germany might allow them to be placed with a German company the following summer for an internship. But you can see we've placed interns all over the world, really, for those international internships. So that's one great advantage. Another advantage comes when students are looking for a job after they graduate. So we have something called the international designation. This is an extra line that you can get on your transcript. So it's a documentation of the work or the effort that you did. It's similar to the sustainability designation that Jeremy talked about. If you meet certain requirements, your transcript will actually show this international designation, which catches employers' eyes. It's something you can put on your resume. We have an example of a graduate from a few years ago. She was invited down to a full-day interview at Texas Instruments with a number of other students. She was the only one who was offered a job that day on the spot. And what they told her was, you have this great international experience on your resume. Like all engineering companies, all the work we do is global. And that international experience shows us that you're ready to jump into the global work of our company. And that was what made the difference for her. So there certainly have been that kind of implication for students. I think probably beyond what you can predict for a job outcome, the global experiences are just valuable in all the ways that you might imagine in terms of the whole philosophy of Calvin, a liberal arts education. We're educating people for their whole lives. That's our goal, right? And we live in a global world. We all know that now. And the more experiences you have, not to just travel as a tourist, but to really dig into other cultures, understand how the work that you're pursuing, your engineering work, impacts other cultures, how the work that you're learning might be done differently in other cultures or understood differently in other cultures. All of that helps you grow in ways that it's really hard to quantify, but we think is just invaluable. And ultimately, too, we find from our students that it helps them answer that fundamental question that so many college students struggle with. Before you can start to figure out your calling in life and figure out where God wants you to be serving, you have to be able to answer the question, who am I, right? And that who am I work is challenging. That's one of your big jobs in the next few years in college, is to answer that question. And quite often our students tell us it's that international travel, it's reflecting on how they are and are not the same as they travel to other cultures that allows them to help answer that question. So this shows you the requirements. If you're interested in that international designation, you have to do 2 of our opportunities. You can go on an international interim, you can do the summer program, or you can have an international internship. Pick any two of those and you can get that designation, and a number of our students do pursue that option. I'm going to turn it back to Jeremy for the conclusion here.
So we're almost to the question and answer time, so be thinking of some good questions, okay? So in summary, engineering at Calvin is about problem solving. It's about kingdom work. It's hard work, but fun work. And the idea is that we want to be able to make a real, tangible difference from the technology that we design. Some of the marks of excellence of our program include placement into industry, both local companies and nationally and internationally. Grad school acceptance, about 15 to 20% of our students go straight on to graduate school, and they've gone to a variety of top schools. The pass rate of Calvin engineering students on the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, which is the first step towards professional licensure in engineering, is much higher and continues to be much higher than the national average. Our students do very well at different kinds of student competitions. This was an innovation in business competition around an engineering product that they designed. Our students have a variety of good work experiences, and then, of course, the international opportunities within engineering, I think, is a distinctive of Calvin's program that you're not going to find in a lot of other places. And so with that, we'll conclude the talking at you, and then we'll talk with you. So questions? Oh, you guys are dead. Stand up a minute. Stand up. Everybody stand up.
We had it.
Okay, thank you. Sit down. Sit down.
We do that to our students when they look too sleepy, too.
Yeah. The participation rate on the FE, how many Calvin students take the FE exam every year?
Gail just walked out, and she would know the numbers because she is our...
I think it's about half. 60 to 70%?
Thank you, Gail.
That's about half.
Over here.
Roughly.
Okay, yeah, sure. Sustainability is becoming kind of a new buzzword, right? And so what does that really mean? Do you want to say more? Jeremy is teaching our sustainability course this semester, so I'm going to let him answer that.
So it's a big idea, big concept. People have tried to encapsulate it by talking about the triple bottom line. People, it's got to have systems that work for people, it's got to be profitable, and then it's got to protect the environment. Something that is sustainable is something that you can keep doing infinitely into the future. And so we're looking at, in the introductory class, which we're teaching for the first time this year, we're looking at land, air, water, transportation, energy, and its population dynamics, food and agriculture, just kind of an overview of sustainability issues seen from a Christian perspective through an engineering lens. So how do engineers get involved with food? How do engineers get involved with transportation and land use? What does an engineer have to say about energy systems? Other questions? Yeah? About 85% of the students will graduate in 4 years. About 85% of the students that graduate in engineering do so in 4 years. No. Jennifer and I got our undergraduate degrees at Michigan State University and did our grad work at the University of Illinois.
There are some faculty here who are Calvin alumni, but we are the non-alumni representatives. Go ahead. Why are we teaching here? That's a really good question. Number one is what Jeremy talked about. It was, as we were in graduate school, I went to graduate school intending to be an engineering professor. While I was in graduate school, which by definition means a large research institution, I became disillusioned because I saw that the job of the professor was writing grant proposals to pay for graduate students to do research. And I said, those are interesting things to do, but I want to teach undergraduate students. And most professors don't spend very much time doing that. When I was seeking out a place that would focus on undergraduate institutions or undergraduate education. That was one thing. Also, the opportunity to integrate my faith with everything that I do in engineering was really new to me, having gone through Michigan State, University of Illinois, and I was really looking forward to that opportunity to talk about how, or figure out how that might work. So the way I think about it is, I spend most of my waking hours at work, and I don't want to have to put my Christianity on the shelf for all those hours of the day. I want my Christianity to inform everything that I do, including the time that I'm at work in some way. And that's the project that we work on here at Calvin, is how does that work out? And that's really important to us.
I think that part of the answer just has to be this is where God has called us to be. And so the opportunity that we have is unique. We job share, so I'm a half-time stay-at-home dad and a half-time engineering professor and a half-time editor for the Control Systems magazine and a part-time wrestling coach, so lots of things. But, this is where God called us to be. I think that's part of the answer. Yeah?
So do your different factions of engineering collaborate as one to make a project towards their senior year?
The question is, do the different types of engineering that we talked about here at Calvin ever collaborate for the senior design projects?
Yes. So the students pick their own teams and they pick their own projects. And as you walk around the engineering building and visit with Calvin engineering students this afternoon, you'll have an opportunity to see that. Some teams are kind of monodiscipline, all civil engineers, all chemical engineers, and some teams are cross-disciplinary.
It depends on the interests of the students to some degree and what expertise they think they need to bring to their project.
What do you do for job fairs, and do you prepare your students anyway for the job fair?
What do we do for job fairs, and how do we prepare our students for job fairs? Good question.
There is a job fair here at Calvin next week. We've got between 100 and 200 companies coming for that job fair.
That's an engineering and computer science focused job fair. That's mostly local West Michigan through Chicago area companies that come here.
There was one in downtown Grand Rapids earlier last month, organized by Grand Valley State University, which some of the Calvin students went to, as well as one that was at Michigan State. And we sent 2.5 van loads of Calvin students to that one as well.
So how do we prepare students for those job fairs, for interviews, all those sorts of things? One thing we do is that all of our sophomores are required to take a seminar with our internship coordinator, Professor Nielsen, who talks about making that transition from being a student where you show up in jeans and whatever to being a professional. So what's that going to look like when you go to your first job interview? What should your resume have on it? He'll collect resumes from everyone. He'll give you feedback. He'll talk about behavior on the job. For some students, it's no big deal. You already know that. For other students, that's something you just have to learn, and he'll talk about that. We have a career center on campus that will also go over resumes, that will do mock interviews with students. As students get to the senior year, we do mock interviews.
With the Calvin Industrial Advisory Board.
Those are
comes-
alumni of Calvin who are working as
or
engineers.
friends of the program, and come and do interviews with students. We've had a number of speakers in senior design talking about job search and professionalism kinds of issues. And then, what was the other thing I was going to say? Interview. Oh, we have companies that just come to Calvin and say, hey, look, we're looking to hire 2 mechanical engineers. Who have you got for us?
So we have a senior resume book, and we'll forward
Yep.
resumes of good matches as well. It's a similar process for the internships as well. Professor Nielsen keeps track of companies looking for interns, sends out resumes to appropriate matches, gets a lot of students internships that way as well.
Your January interims, what sort of range of costs do you normally see for those?
How much do those January interims cost? The ones that are off campus. So if you stay on campus, it's usually free. It's included in your tuition. Those off-campus ones have an additional fee for the travel. I believe the engineering ones range between about $3,000 and $5,000. Are the other faculty who have done those want to correct me?
Randy?
Is that $3,000 to $5,000 about the right range for the off-campus interims? Yeah. 46 is the highest. 35 to 4,500.
And the summer in Germany program is under 6,000, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And there is some financial aid available in the program, and some need-based aid for those.
Question in the back.
Yep, so that was there is need-based aid available for the summer program, and there's some scholarships for the interims available.
If you did an internship in another country, would you have to, like, how would that financially work? And do you guys help with, like, housing or stuff like that? Or is it just like, hey,
So that's a
Great
good question. The first thing is the financial, and that varies by the country. What we have found with European internships is they are typically paid very poorly or not at all because college is free in Europe. So the European interns don't really need to make money in the summer to pay for their college. So that is something that can be a drawback for some students. It's just not as feasible for them as to get. If you get an internship in the U.S. in engineering, you're going to be paid very well for the summer, and that's going to help pay for your next year's college. So that is something to take into account. Some countries are not the same, though. It depends. We've had students, for example, who work for, Melanie was at UOP, and then she was at UOP in Chicago for a summer. They liked her. They invited her to go back to UOP in India for the next summer, but she was paid at their same intern rates as any U.S. intern would have been paid. Because they wanted to invite her back and have her have that global experience with them. And now she's working for them full time. So that worked out really well. So it varies by the country, it varies by the company. In terms of housing and everything, we don't necessarily have anything in place because our students find internships all over the world. We'll assist you as we can, but no.
But that's part of the job.
That's part of
One
your
of the
job,
things that
yeah.
the internship coordinator does is works with students, both on the financial and the logistical arrangements.
Sometimes we've been able to arrange scholarships to help pay, for example, airfare. If you're not going to get paid for the internship, maybe we can get the airfare covered by a scholarship so you can at least get there for free. So we've had different arrangements.
Some students have done homestays during the summer, and then some will, either the corporation arranges for short-term housing, or sometimes that can be done at a local college or university. They have dorm space available. So there's a variety of
When you
models.
saw all the different countries students have been to, you can imagine the arrangements vary a lot by the different countries and the different companies. But, yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about the architecture program here at Calvin now?
Is Leonard here? I believe, Gail, what would you like to say about that? You probably know that best.
For a long time, we've had preparation for architecture craft, such as teach the practice architect. You have to be an advanced degree. And 8, 10 years ago, we started having some fine minors that all students considered for that. That minor has now been canceled in the future, but there are still enough architecture courses to take that your goal is to go to architecture
So the quick summary of that is architecture is a graduate degree. You can get prepared for graduate school in architecture by coming to Calvin, largely in the art department with some courses in engineering.
Well, I guess the other thing that I would say is that civil engineering is great preparation if you want to go to grad school in architecture. And, you know, if you decide along the way that architecture isn't for you, then you've got a degree that will give you a good career, right? The engineering degree is very flexible. We have students that go on not only to architecture, but also to medicine, to law school, a variety of different grad programs, not just engineering. Michelle's telling me that we should wrap this up. So let's have the next slide.
If we have one last question, and then we'll make sure we know where everyone's going next. Yeah, in the back. In projects. So you're doing projects from your very first class here in Engineering 101, your very first semester on campus. That's part of our curriculum all the way through 4 years, and we think that's really critical to your education.
Those rockets that were being launched at the beginning, or the end of the video, that's the first 4 weeks of Engineering 101. And then the last part of Engineering 101 involves a service learning project, designing a device or process or system to help someone with a disability do their job more easily or better. And we partner with a variety of local clients to provide a real experience for students in that area. So I think that the hands-on, the practical piece starts day one.
Thank you. If more questions are occurring to you throughout the day or as you're walking around, please save those for the panel discussion. Ask our alumni and our current students, because that's a good reality check. Make sure we're not lying to you up here, right? They'll tell you the true story of their experience as students, and that's right after lunch. Right now, we're inviting the students to join a Calvin Engineering class if you would like to. And there's a financial aid session for the parents. The only reason we're not inviting parents for the most part to the classes is space. We run out of chairs because we've got 60-some students here today to divide up in the classrooms, and we just wouldn't have room. So the parents are invited to do that or grab a cup of coffee or whatever you'd like to do. We have hosts here to walk you to the location, so I'm going to ask them to wave their hands as I read them. If you're